They are symbolic of what many, many people in this country, including the leaders, so-called, of this country, are choosing to have America represent. And that is destruction and cruelty. And that brings me back to my family, because those are both Trump family traits. Starting, of course, with the patriarch, my grandfather, Fred, who was a sociopath. So, from the very beginning, Donald was at a huge disadvantage, but so too was my dad, who was the oldest son, namesake, and potentially heir to the empire. So the first thing I'm aware of in terms of a building project that went horribly awry and really revealed my grandfather to be who he was a building project he had in mind called Steeplechase. Now, back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, Steeplechase was a much beloved amusement park in Coney Island. But it ran into some financial difficulties, and the Tillieu family, who owned Steeplechase, had to sell it or close it. I'm not sure which. So my grandfather bought the land in hopes of building another massive residential complex in the vein of Trump Village, another huge apartment complex in Brooklyn. The problem was many people, even though Steeplechase was closed, loved it and wanted to give it landmark status, which would have meant not being able to build on it. So while this was winding its way through, I guess, the courts or what have you, my grandfather decided to take matters into his own hands. At the same time, though, my dad, who had quit the family business briefly to become a pilot for TWA and was desperately looking for a way to find his way back into my grandfather's good graces, to the extent that he was ever in them, was offered the opportunity by my grandfather to take charge of the Steeplechase project, even though my grandfather probably knew it was a losing proposition, or maybe especially because my grandmother knew it was going to be a losing proposition. So in order to circumvent the landmark status process and risk losing the potential for building what would have been a very lucrative residential project, my grandfather hosted an event, making, again, my dad the face of it, in which there were bikini-clad models, my grandfather wielding a sledgehammer, selling bricks to people to throw through the stained glass windows at Steeplechase and essentially destroy it, even though he had no rights to it at the time. But because it had already been destroyed, there was nothing to make a landmark anymore. So my grandfather ended up not being able to build on it, but at the same time, Steeplechase, as Brooklyn residents knew it, was gone because it was destroyed by my grandfather.
So basically, if he couldn't have it, he wanted it destroyed.
That's right.